What's up, curious readers? This is Dave from Dave's Book Summaries, and I am back with another book. This book is a best-selling book written by Gratz, and it is called The Refugee. It's a very popular children's book that is about three refugee children that try to escape their countries and go to freedom. So without further delay, let's get started. The first boy is Joseph Landau, who flees Germany in 1938 during the reign of Hitler and the Nazis. On November 9 to 10, 1938, on what was called the Crystal Night, Joseph's home is invaded by the Nazis and his father is taken to a concentration camp. Aaron Landau is freed from the camp after 6 whole months, at a condition to leave the country immediately. When Rachel, his mom, gets the news, she takes Joseph and his sister Ruthie to the boarding of a ship. The ship was called the MS St. Louis, and this ship was specifically designed for bringing the Jewish refugees to Cuba. The family meets Aaron at the ship. Joseph's dad was acting paranoid and looking afraid, and this was most likely because of the concentration camp. First, his dad refuses to board the ship with the ordinary procedures. He thought that the ship was a trap set by the Nazis, so he decided to try and rush into the ship without showing any documents. After Joseph's mom solved this issue and his family was officially on board, his dad even refused to leave the cabin whatsoever. Aaron even declines to attend Joseph's bar mitzvah. A bar mitzvah is a Jewish ceremony that happens near a boy's 13th birthday, which celebrates the boy's turning into an adult. So anyways, as I said, Aaron doesn't attend Joseph's bar mitzvah because of his fearful and distrustful attitude. 2 weeks after leaving for Cuba, the ship approaches its destination. Here, the passengers are supposed to get a medical exemption. To be allowed into the nation, the whole family has to be perfectly healthy. This inspection reminded Joseph's dad of something that used to happen at the concentration camps. These thoughts make Joseph's father, Aaron, very worried, and he starts whimpering and acting even more childish and weird. Thinking that the doctor will mark Joseph's father unstable, Joseph is forced to slap his dad and also tell him that the Nazis will get him if he doesn't calm down. Even though it was a lie, this managed to calm down Aaron for a little while. It also made Joseph realize that he had just traded places with his father as the adult of the family. After the inspection, the passengers want to know when they will be moved into Cuba. They get a response of mañana, which means tomorrow in Spanish. The passengers were told mañana every time they asked the next day. A few days later, 3 Nazi officers raided and destroyed everything in Joseph's room. This frightens Aaron again and makes him start being fearful. Because of his fear being at its peak after the room invasion, Joseph's dad attempts suicide by jumping over the side of the ship. But a Cuban officer, Mariano Padron, rescues Aaron and takes him to Cuban mainland for treatment. There were also 2 girls who were traveling alone without any parents because their father was already on Cuban land. These 2 girls were also allowed refugee status in Cuba because their dad was already on the land. Joseph asks Officer Padron if his family could disembark the ship because their dad is also on Cuban land. But the officer tells him that they cannot because his dad hasn't been there for some certain amount of time. Joseph gets mad, but Officer Padron has no choice but to apologize and say that he is just doing his job. The Cuban government had denied entry to all of the passengers. The passengers were now mad, but the captain convinced them that the crew will do their best to find permission from another government. The MS St. Louis first sails to the closest nearby nation that has space for refugees, and that was the United States of America, and asked for permission there. But unfortunately, Joseph's father was left behind in Cuba when they were leaving the Cuban docks. On the way to America, Joseph and a few other adult passengers tried to take over the ship's crew by hostage. But the captain, whose name was Captain Schroeder, takes them down. Once they reach the USA, they are again declined, and this forces them with no option but to go back to Europe. Even after getting there, the captain, who is a nice man, did his best to get all the passengers in a country other than Germany. Joseph, his mom, and his sister are assigned to resettle in France. Isabel is the second character of the book. She is a girl living in 1994 Cuba during Fidel Castro's time. After the fall of the Soviet, Cuba was in a very short supply of food. Many are unemployed and families are hungry. If people tried to flee Cuba, Castro imprisoned them. Isabel's dad, Geraldo, had tried to escape Cuba once before and had been thrown into jail for a whole year. Isabel tried to earn money for her family by playing her trumpet on the streets. One of these days, a riot breaks out and Geraldo was threatened by a policeman again. Geraldo knew he had to leave Cuba and planned to do it the very next day. The same evening, Castro lifts his policy and allows people to leave the country. Isabel convinces her grandfather Lito, her mom Teresa, to leave with her father. Teresa, who was pregnant and expecting a child in a week, was not really excited to leave the country, but she agreed. Isabel's best friend, Ivan, who was also her neighbor, was building a boat with his dad, Senor Castillo. Isabel convinced the Castillos to let her family come on board with them to flee Cuba. But the Castillos didn't have any gasoline, so Isabel sells her trumpet to get gas for a trip to America. They decided to leave that night itself before Castro changes his mind again. While everyone was ready to leave, at shore, two policemen, Luis and Amara, jumped into the boat. Luis was the older son of the Castillos and Amara was his girlfriend. Because these policemen were deserting, the boat is shot at by other police officers. A small hole is made on the side of the boat, and everyone has to start removing water immediately and also find a way to plug the hole. Later that night, a big tanker is right in the boat's path. The boat had floated into the shipping lanes. With a lot of effort, the boat managed to turn on the engines and get out of the tanker's way. But while doing this, they ended up losing all of their medicines and matches because they fell out into the sea. Ivan's dad, Senor Castillo, also ended up falling out in the panic moments, and Isabel jumps into the water to save him. Everyone is happy that Isabel managed to save Senor Castillo and return back safely. The next day, a very strong storm emerges and the boat is hit with strong rain. While the people were doing their best to keep the boat steady and remove water at the same time, Isabel is reminded of her grandmother's death. Her grandma, Lita, had died 2 years ago after a cyclone caught her and swept her out into the deep seas. The storm dies out in a day, and a bright sun emerges the very next morning. Teresa, Isabel's mom, starts to get a fever and is feeling very sick. But they could do nothing about it because they had lost all their medicine. But soon, they spot shore and everyone is excited to reach Miami. But when they are directed where to dock temporarily, an officer tells them that they are in the Bahamas and not the Miami. They had sailed to the wrong nation. The officer tells them that they are not allowed on land in the Bahamas and have to leave. Before the boat leaves, people on the shore give Isabel some medicine and food to last for a few days. Isabel is very thankful for this. The boat starts getting cracks, and as the journey continues, every once in a while, people start rotating to float beside the boat to lessen the weight on it. When it's Ivan's turn to be in the water, he is attacked by sharks and he eventually dies because no one is able to stop the bleeding. But this makes everyone sad, but the very next morning, they spot Miami. Everyone starts rowing towards the shore, but a Coast Guard ship starts going after them. Leto volunteers to jump out of the boat and pretend that he is drowning to buy everyone time. Everyone declines, but he confesses that he deserves it, and he's also fine with living in Cuba for the rest of his life. He says that he deserves it because Leto was one of the officers that turned down Joseph's ship back in 1939. He feels guilty and wants to make it up, so he jumps out and the Coast Guard goes to save him first. Isabel's brother is born on the boat while they were rowing for shore. Everyone makes it into Miami safely, and they are granted refugee status because they made it to shore before being caught. Isabel is gifted a new trumpet by her uncle Guillermo, and she starts her new life there. So that's it for the second story. Next, we'll hear the story of the third boy, Mahmoud. Mahmoud is the third main character, and he's a 13-year-old boy living in Aleppo, Syria in 2015. Syria has been experiencing a civil war since the Arab Spring of 2011, and Aleppo is constantly being bombed. Mahmoud has learned to blend in and be invisible in order to survive. He also does this to protect his 10-year-old brother Walid. One day after school, Mahmoud's apartment is hit with bombs. After this, Mahmoud, Walid, his mother Fatima, their father Yusuf, and their infant sister Hana all set off to try and seek refuge in Germany. As Mahmoud's family drives to Turkey, Syrian soldiers get into their car, but everyone is quickly attacked, forcing Mahmoud and his family to leave the car and walk over 8 hours in 2 days to the Turkish border. Following this, they wait in Turkey for a boat that will take them to Greece. People constantly try to take advantage of them. For example, a boy makes them pay just to show them a place where they can sleep. Then he sells them life vests, saying that it will help them on their trip. But turns out the life vests were fake. Each day, Mahmoud and his family are told that the boat to Greece will be ready for them tomorrow, but this continues for 7 days. This leaves them exhausted and dejected. Finally, they are able to take a boat, which is called a dinghy, to Greece. But a storm hits on their way in the water, and they are thrown into the sea. Mahmoud, Fatima, and Hana become separated from Yusuf and Walid, and they tread water for hours. Another boat passes them, but there is no room on the boat for Mahmoud or Fatima. Mahmoud asks them to take Hana, worried that she won't be able to survive if they have to remain in the water. They agree and take his baby sister, a loss that traumatizes Fatima for a very, very long time. Hours later, Mahmoud and his mom are finally rescued by the Greek Coast Guard, and they reunite with Walid and Yusuf. They continue on to Athens, Greece, but are unable to find Hannah. The family travels without stopping all the way through Macedonia. Then they find a taxi to take them to Serbia. But again, the taxi driver holds them at gunpoint, demanding all of their money, and here they are taken advantage of again. Then they have to walk the rest of the way to Serbia again before continuing on to Hungary. At the Hungarian border, soldiers throw tear gas at them, and then they take him to a detention center, where soldiers beat Yusuf and call the Syrian refugees parasites and filth. Then they are relocated to a refugee camp afterwards. Mahmoud starts using his trick to being invisible and to survive the detention camp and the refugee camp. But eventually he decides that to survive the camp and to actually become a refugee in Germany, he will have to become visible and gain attention. To do this, when a UN officer is visiting the refugee camp, he walks straight out of the door, which is not allowed, and everyone starts pointing guns at him, but he continues walking since no one is able to shoot because of the UN officer. Looking at this, everyone else follows Mahmoud, and they walk all the way 12 hours to the border of Austria, gaining the attention of the news on the way. When they reach the border, they are greeted by many Austrians who saw the 12-hour march on the news, and everyone starts giving them food, clothes, and medical attention. They are still not able to find Hannah again. Mohammed and his family continues to Germany to receive asylum there. After a month, they are placed with a host family while they start to build their new lives. The host family turns out to be Ruthie, now an old woman, and her husband Saul. When she hears Mohammed's story and how they had to give up Hannah, she assures him that they will find her eventually. Ruthie tells him her own story and how the Nazis had caught her, Joseph, and Rachel in France, and how Joseph had taken a choice for his mom. So this comforts Mohammed, telling him that Hannah will eventually survive and be in a happy place. Mohammed is sad, but he's also grateful that Ruthie lived so that she could help Mohammed and his family. So that is the end of Mohammed's story 2. Alright guys, that is it for all 3 stories we talked about: Joseph, Isabel, and Mohammed. Now you see why this book was a bestseller book. All 3 stories are very well written and they connect so very well. Alan Gratz did a great job of writing this book. Anyways, so thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Keep reading, keep improving. Peace out.